Hey y'all, we're Wage War. I'm Cody.
Chris.
Seth.
Steven, I play drums.
And Britain.
And today we're going to talk about the metal essentials. Who wants to start?
This is like the most big one for me personally, like just getting into metal in general. I mean, when I was a little kid, my dad was super into like classic rock, like always grew up listening like Van Halen and, you know, Ozzy and things like that. But you remember like the early 2000s and 90s, every parent had these big, giant, ugly entertainment centers. It fit like just a big, thick tube TV that's just like, you know, 3 foot by 4 foot wide inside of there. But I remember my dad had one cabinet that was just full of CDs, and I remember just thumbing through like this giant thing with like thousands of CDs in this ugly freaking entertainment center. And I came across Metallica Ride the Lightning, and I remember popping that in, and like I'm always was a fan of rock and roll, but like hearing Fight Fire with Fire with that riff comes in for the first time, I'm like, yep, this is it. Like, this is where I belong. I think I was around like 13, 14 around the time. Like I had heard like Enter Sandman and things like that, but never like really dove in to like the actual riffs from Metallica. So yeah, and then I just kind of branched out from there, got super into Pantera and things like that. But I think Ride the Lightning is a big one for a lot of people.
I'll hit you with one of mine. So this was clearly the biggest inspiration for me because of the drummer Jimmy Sullivan from Avenged Sevenfold. The album was City of Evil, which I think dropped in 2005. This album really shaped me into the drummer that I am today. I remember being devastated with the news of the Rev. I think it was around Christmas time, 2008, 2009. And I mean, it not only devastated me, but I think the whole metal community. I mean, I'll still jam that record front to back sometimes. Beast and the Harlot was the first one on that record, which is just slamming. It's insane. And then I think it's Burn It Down is second, and then Blinded in Chains. Just so many inspirational songs on that record for me.
Number one, it was Seosin self-titled album. That was one that I truthfully could not stop spinning. Had it in my CD player in my parents' car. My best friend Zach, who lived down the street, he's the one that showed it to me. Every time we'd ride in his car, would listen to it. And that album was important to me because that was the first time I'd really listened to music like that just was heavy, like super intricate guitar work, but it wasn't necessarily like screaming the whole time. And I just thought it was awesome how catchy like all the choruses were, all the verses, super interesting. Everyone in that band was super talented. The drummer, I think his name was Alex Rodriguez. But I remember specifically there was one song, Bury Your Head, that before the album came out, they had like a black and white live video of them playing. Guitar player did a guitar spin like near the end. And that was one I just connected with that just honestly got me super hyped to be in a band. I actually listened to it yesterday on my drive, and just so many guitar riffs. I truthfully feel like there's not a skippable song on that record.
So Shadows Are Security by As I Lay Dying is my number one, and I know I kind of swiped that from Cody because that was a huge record for him as well. But yeah, man, I mean, we grew up, you know, in a cool music town where literally bands like A Day to Remember and Under Oath were coming up. So like, I had a brother who, you know, played in local metal bands, and actually got to see Under Oath and A Day to Remember before they became what they are now, of course. So I was kind of already in that world, but less in like the metal side of things. And I remember a friend showing me As I Lay Dying for the first time, and I think it was off of Frail Words Collapse. It was like 94 Hours or something. And that was like my first taste of it. So I was like ready for it and anticipating the band's like next release, which I believe was Shadows Are Security. And that was just such a huge record for me. All the riffs are like singable, but at the same time so aggressive and metal, and like Nick Hippa's guitar solos are like a huge inspiration for what I do when I'm doing that kind of thing. I don't know, I just feel like anybody who plays guitar and was into metalcore at that time, you couldn't miss that record.
So the first of my picks for me would have been An Ocean Between Us. I remember, I think Within Destruction was the first song that came out, and it was like so thrashy and like aggressive and fast, and I thought that was like so sick. But the real one for me was the title track, An Ocean Between Us. There was like something about just like the marriage, and there's bands that have done it before, but I feel like As I Lay Dying really like paved the way for like this melodic, clean singing chorus and then like brutal riffs and verses. I learned a lot about songwriting and how to write riffs from, learning As I Lay Dying albums. I learned a lot about, layering and strong song structure and all of that kind of stuff from An Ocean Between Us.
I remember starting my, metal journey when I was a teenager, trying to learn how to do like screaming vocals and whatnot. Yeah, I remember coming across that record. It's All That Remains, The Fall of Ideals. And that's the one I feel like I practiced the most to and like developed my own kind of sound, just going through that whole record. I know This Calling is a big one for like a lot of the drummers out there. I think 6 was on Guitar Hero 2, like everyone played that. I think the song The Weak Willed is the one I like spun all the time trying to like emulate those kind of sounds. So yeah, that was fun. I probably drove my mom and dad nuts though, screaming that record in my room.
My second one would be Homesick by Day to Remember. I feel like that one was definitely a game changer for a lot of people in our genre. Definitely influenced me from a young age. That was the first CD I ever spun. The day I got my driver's license, I got my first car. I specifically remember getting in, no parents in the car, not having to have like chaperone or whatever it's called, whoever has to be in the car, and just cranking that thing and listening. But I feel like that one was huge just because they kind of blended like the pop punk, some like the heavy roots of like hardcore and stuff like that in it, like the breakdowns, just super, super catchy. And I hadn't really listened to music like that much either. I don't feel like many other people were doing that same thing at the time or doing it as well. What they did definitely has influence on a ton of people. Like I would say, especially like what we do now, trying to mix some of those elements of pop or like pop punk or whatever, just like catchy choruses, and then go right into a breakdown, after that. I feel like Downfall is probably one of the most iconic metalcore like songs that have come out in a long time. I feel like anyone starts that intro, who doesn't know where it's going?
I was going back and forth between like Slipknot and Trivium. I landed on Scream Aim Fire from Bullet for My Valentine because of one song in particular. It was Waking the Demon. I thought that song was so sick. It definitely helped me with stamina in my playing. It helped me with consistency and my feet. And the rest of the record is fire as well. It was tough picking between Scream Aim Fire and The Poison, but Waking the Demon kind of put it over the edge because that was huge for me.
So my second album is Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses by Slipknot. I remember at the time that hit me at like a point where I was like exclusively listening to heavy music with like metal riffs and breakdowns and stuff and like radio rock, whatever wasn't for me. And I remember listening to the radio and hearing Duality for the first time, and I was like, what is this? This record in particular literally sounds like, 9 dudes in there just going for it. The Blister Exists, one of my favorite songs, obviously, Before I Forget, Pulse the Maggots. It's kind of funny because like I wasn't really able to listen to Slipknot growing up. My parents were very strict about the things that I listened to, so a lot of times it was via burnt CDs or the radio or however that would work. But yeah, this album was a big influence on me, and I still feel like I take a lot of, again, just like notes and hints from like how a heavy band was able to like expand and become like what they are today.
My final one would have to be Constellations by August Burns Red. You guys know that was my band in high school, and like right before Constellations came out, I had just started kind of getting a taste of them and like kind of getting into them. So they dropped Constellations, and that was all I listened to for probably a year straight. Matt Greiner, aside from you, Steven, all right, probably the best drummer in the scene, right? I gotta say it because he's right here. And just like the breakdown patterns for that band specifically are like so unique. I think they did so many like things that I would never think to do that I've never heard before, like different time signatures and stuff, like doing like a 7/8 signature, like breakdown pattern where it kind of like hurts your brain when you hear it, but you like the way it hurts.
I feel like it's a good group of 10 that like definitely made us and shaped the scene now. I would definitely put all these 10 records like on the table of just influence for everyone still who's coming up right now. Yeah, I appreciate anyone who's been watching or Wage War.